What's up, everyone? Well, it's morning here and I'm right near Black Butte Reservoir in Northern California, a little bit off I-5, and behind me is one of the sort of rock outcroppings that I came here to see. I've been to this site once before, and today I'm going to see what I can find in terms of some pretty cool dark rock to use for root over rock bonsai. I feel really lucky to be here today because last night there was a very rare rainstorm, well, not rainstorm, thunder showers, and this area has actually gotten wet. So the moss that's growing on these rocks is nice and green, and I have the sun at my back. So I'm going to take a look around. This is a pretty big outcropping, but I'm not going to mess with this because right over there is a scree slope, and at the bottom of that I can find as many rocks as I want for sure. Right here at the bottom of this cliff there's plenty of rocks here, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up these rocks and just kind of look at the shapes and try to find ones that really give me what I'm looking for. So really what I'm trying to find are rocks that have interesting shapes, and some of the things that I don't want are 90-degree angles on the rock, and I also don't want flat faces. So a lot of these will have a relatively flat face, but one of the things I like about these stones, and you can kind of see it in the morning light, is the sort of little undulations that happen on those. And the lichen is really nice, but I don't expect in the long term that once this is removed from this environment that the lichen will continue on growing in my own garden. So even though it has some visual appeal right now, it's not really long-term sustainable, and I would have to look at finding some lichen that will grow well in my yard. So this is a good example of a rock that has a lot of qualities that I'm looking for. So if I look at it from the top, there's a little bit of a twist going on in these facets and a nice little ridge here at the bottom. And when I set this with this as the base, it's nice and flat, so it sits easily in the palm of my hand. And in addition to that, it tapers just like we really want to see in bonsai. So if I take a pine tree and wrap the roots over this, that's just going to exaggerate that taper. So we have a nice shape, some interesting faceting, and just the lichen is just a bonus, but this is definitely a good usable rock. All right, well, this backpack's not very big, but it probably weighs about 150 pounds right now. So I am going to walk it down to my car down there and then come back up and get another backpack full of rocks. Now that's tiring. I guess I'm just lucky I'm not carrying the rocks up the hill. All right, so I'm back in the workshop, and I'm just going to take a look at a couple of these rocks, and I'm going to shoot some photos of them and then make some drawings that represent maybe the future use of those stones. All right, imagine that this rock is actually the trunk of your tree. And rather than covering this trunk, you want to enhance the best aspects of it. So from this angle, which is the one out of a few different pictures that I took, it has some interesting movement. You can see this line is kind of interesting, and this kind of matches it, and then there's some interest in the middle here. So when we're designing our root over rock, we could put the base of the tree pretty much anywhere. We could put the base of the tree down here, we could put the base of the tree right at the top of the rock, and each one of those things will have a little bit different effect. But let's for the sake of this exercise, not put the tree right at the top of the rock, but try putting it maybe down here, kind of on this shoulder. And I don't want to fill in this space with roots. If anything, I want to have the roots maybe come down and across that space and then down this face, or I want to have the roots come down this outer face and back on the other side. So let's start with that as an idea. I'm gonna just sort of imagine that I have a pine tree and it's got some roots. Now this might in reality take a couple of years, but the roots have grasped the rock and are flowing down this direction, maybe across the rock like this, and then the roots that are on this side are exaggerating the taper, you know, the base of the rock on this side, which is going to increase the girth overall. So if those are my roots and you're from what is our front, seeing just a few of them, then we have to ask ourselves, okay, what is the trunk doing? Now, do I want the trunk to be headed off in this direction, opposite the visual flow of the rock, which is headed in that direction? Or do I want the trunk to just kind of come up a little bit and hug the rock? But remembering that this rock is sort of our trunk, let's think about a good bonsai design. And so I'm gonna add a little bit of movement here. Now, let's say that the base comes like this, and we don't want it to be totally straight, but I also don't want it to, I don't want it to just completely follow the rock. Now, this creates a little bit of a competition between this portion of the rock visually and this portion of the trunk. And so as a young tree, when we're designing root over rock bonsai, it might be kind of weird. You might be looking at this thinking to yourself, I'm not sure that's really going to end up looking that great. For some reason, I'm really wanting to draw a root coming down here. So let me do that. Just sort of towards the back of the composition, or the back of this, because this face is kind of angled away. So at this point, when you're looking at just the trunk and say you have like a big sacrifice branch on here or something like that, there's a visual competition between this, and that's sort of problematic. But if I take this and I start building branches, and I bring branches down over here, and I bring branches down over here, and pines make nice little buds. Japanese black pine make nice little buds from right here at what would be the 0-year node. And then if you check some of my other videos, there's a couple of techniques that I use to make sure that I have lots of low branching. And so we can imagine that we could get a branch structure like this, and then maybe there's another jog up here, and the tree kind of goes up into what is essentially a relatively low squat crown. And then from there, I can just sort of transition to drawing pillows of foliage to accentuate the movement of the trunk and to kind of harmonize things. Now, this is a two-dimensional drawing, and that is really the intent here. I think I actually probably drew one branch too many here, and the eraser on this pencil is terrible, so I'm not going to try to erase it. We'll just call that a gin. But maybe because the rock is visually headed that direction, and now my trunk and top are sort of headed that direction. I want the low branch typically to be on this side as well. So this kind of design exercise is really how I think about these rocks when I'm trying to collect them in my mind. This is what I'm sort of going for, and the scale here, you know, this printout is not quite as big as the actual rock, but this is a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, 8.5 inches by 11 inches, standard American paper size. And so my composition as it stands right now is probably only about 6 inches tall, but the actual rock is more like 6 inches by itself. So I would expect like an 8, 10, 12 inch composition, depending on how well you manage to execute this. So yeah, I mean, I love doing this. I could do this all day, but I hope that helps you guys understand designing, or the idea behind designing with the tree and the rock in mind. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.